Hello there lads and ladies, welcome back finally to another manga review. Today we have a very fun one. I'm actually very interested in this manga because I believe it's shojo, and I don't do an awful lot of shojo because I feel like the art style is a little bit too cutesy, a little bit too stiff, if you know what I mean. Like how the way they draw certain characters, they kind of come off a little bit too doll-like, or they're too sharpish basically. But with this manga, it's actually very well done. It's more moe-esque in a certain sense, and it's not overly done, but it focuses more on the romance benefits between the two protagonists, and also the interesting thing that the main protagonist is going through, which is illness, and that is Kaiju girl Caramelise. Now, with this manga, I'm very interested in kaiju monsters. Basically, if you don't know what kaijus are, with this series, it kind of was written by a kaiju fan, and I'm kind of glad that it's a fan writing this and not, say, someone from the actual creators of like certain kaiju monsters, like Godzilla, Mothra, Anguirus, and Ghidorah or Ghidorah, so on and so forth, however you say it, or Monster Zero, because it's different when it's from a fan's perspective to a creator's perspective, because yes, the creator knows ins and outs of the characters here and there, but there are some things that super fans do which bring a new light to it, and it kind of like gives lovely little references to certain monsters, like how it gives a reference to Mothra, who is my favourite kaiju of them already. I even have a tattoo of her. I even know the Mothra song, oddly enough. I believe, how does it go? It's, Mosura ya Mosura, Dongan kasakuyan, Indomu, Ristorinando, Hanba Hanba Muyan, Randa Banyuradan, Tonyukanra, Kasakuya, something like that. But I know the whole song, but I'm not going to bore you with the whole song. I know the King Seesaw song, but I'm not going to bore you with that one as well. This review will go on for way too long. Anyway, it's a kaiju based manga, which I'm very happy about, but it's also got, it's also a shoujo, so it's obviously going to have romance in it, which is kind of nice really, because who doesn't like a romance novel at the end of the day? The main characters are Kuro and Minami. Minami is the boy, Kuro is the girl. Kuro suffers from a type of illness which causes her to, any type of strong emotional outburst, she tends to transmogrify into sort of a monster, kind of a beast. The monster looks similar to what Godzilla looks like, but it has some like small changes, like on its head, how it kind of looks like the spikes are kind of in the same shape as Destroyer, or Destroyer, I like to call him. I believe he was from the Heisei version of a Godzilla flick. He was like one of the best Heisei villains, I believe. I can't remember if it was more Millennium or Heisei. I think he was Heisei, yes, because he was like he was the monster that was meant to kill Godzilla in the Heisei series. That was when they tried to go back to his roots as a city destroyer, or as a villain basically. So if I can kind of show you what he looks like, or what she looks like in her full kaiju form, it's something similar like this basically. How you see how it looks an awful lot more like Godzilla here in certain senses, like with the thick body, the skins and the head and so on and so forth, but the horns are similar to what Destroyer looks like. I don't actually have a picture of Destroyer, but if you do know like your kaiju flicks and all that, you definitely do know who Destroyer is. It's actually the army that kills him, oddly enough, in that film, which was kind of a surprise, because normally the army's quite useless when it comes to kaijus and all that. But anyway, on to the story. Now, Kuro obviously is trying to keep her emotions intact after the prologue kind of gives us an instant that she kind of likes this Minami boy. Ever since childhood, she went to give him a flower, and from that first spark of emotion that she felt towards him, which was like a crush or a love or something like that, her hand turned into kind of the monster claw that we saw basically, and he got kind of scared, as you would do basically. He's just a kid, he's obviously gonna call her a monster or a freak, and then he ran away scared, so on and so forth, and that obviously stuck with her, as it would most people. Being called a freak, or if you're ugly or so on and so forth, it's going to do that to you. And throughout her life, she has sought the expert help of a close friend of her mother's, who I believe is also an archaeologist. He comes up later on, but I'll explain about him in the next volume. Um, so yeah, she's basically trying to live the life of a NEET in a certain sense. So obviously she doesn't want to live like that, but she has to protect Tokyo and her family and friends basically around her. Well, she doesn't have any friends unfortunately, but that's due to her be living as a NEET basically, unfortunately. So I kind of like the aspect of the transformation being based on emotions, because as we all know, young girls and young boys go through certain like small transformations when they're young into adulthood, or into when they're teens into adulthood, especially for young women. You know, when it comes to um, like periods, and like how your body changes when you like meet boys, and how like your body changes around them, and like when it comes to intercourse and so on and so forth. It kind of delves into like what it's like really to for a young lady to grow up basically. And I kind of like how Spike Aoki has done this with Kuro, how it's kind of it's not too on the nose, like it's just like in passing when you mention it, like how the connection between the emotion of turning into a monster and like growing up and becoming an adult is kind of interchangeable, but it's not too like in your face about it, you know. And so the way these two meet is that Minami basically finds Kuro in a small space on some stairways. That's the only place she can be during break time to basically be herself, basically. And they get conversing. She quite likes pancakes. Like she uses pancakes as a way to calm herself down when it comes to emotions. It's kind of also due to the fact that I feel like food is probably brought in to like handle the issue with certain young women with obesity, because I feel like also it's to do with bulimia as well, because I believe young women who suffer stress or who are bulimic is due to basically living up to an image that they cannot like handle in a certain sense, kind of like how you have this unduly pressure on young women to basically like be slimmer, be fitter, be like, you know, they're like living up to an image that is just impossible basically, and it's just not really fair to put all that type of pressure on a young woman basically, when you should be allowing them to realize that there's more to life than just beauty. There's inner beauty as well, there's a personality. And yes, most people say like, oh, personality does matter. Well, actually yes, it does. For a long-term relationship you have to have the personality, or otherwise it's just, you know, people are just going to base you on your looks basically. So I like how it kind of gives those small little nuances on that. But yes, the first transformation happens, I believe, when they meet eyes or something like that. And Minami takes Kuro on a date just to kind of break the ice, to be friends at first. And I believe he holds her hand when these three bullies starts to tease Kuro for being with Minami, basically. You know, how like she doesn't deserve to be with him and all that rubbish, basically. And I quite like the three bullies because I don't like them, but I like that there's three of them, because that kind of gives a small little reference to King Ghidorah. Because King Ghidorah, who's the three-headed dragon, is basically, well, I should say he's an alien, not a dragon, is similar to these three girls, since there's two of them that look the same, and the middle one is basically a little bit more, is the leader of the three, is the leader of the pack, and that is the same thing with Ghidorah, basically, you know, the three heads, and how the middle one always leads the other two, basically. It's kind of interesting, really, so that was a nice little subtle hint of a reference in there, and not many people would have caught that, but yeah, that's really good, actually. Anyway, her transformation happens as she's running away from Minami. She says she has to go and do something. She then transforms as she falls off a bridge into the water, and then she rises out of the water, and then she transforms into Harugan, which is a name which one of the comedians on the talk show gives about her when they find her in the middle of Tokyo. She doesn't cause any damage. She just notices Minami looking at her, whilst her corgi, I believe, tries to get his attention to try and get him to the area to see her, and that kind of causes her to go into a bit of an embarrassment, and then she like dives back under the water, and then she detransmogrifies back into a girl. And the interesting thing with that is that she doesn't realize what she's happened, so she's not aware like of the events that happens when she turns into a kaiju, which kind of takes certain aspects of like pregnancy into it as well in a certain sense, because I feel like if you're pregnant or if you like have those like ups and downs of hormones, basically it's kind of like when you're being drunk, like if you're not the person you tend to be normally, or if you're like at a heightened sense of emotions, you tend to say and do things differently to what you're normally or that you normally do. It's the same thing like when it comes to food, really, how women eat different foods and drink because of the baby, basically. That's why you act differently, because the baby wants specific foods, basically. Kind of like how my mum used to have a big enjoyment for ice cream, which is strange because she doesn't normally eat ice cream on the go, really. But when when she was pregnant with me, she ate an awful lot of ice cream. Also, she liked mushrooms, although she doesn't mind mushrooms now. She tends to eat an awful lot of mushrooms, which is kind of funny. But yes, we then meet a young girl. I cannot remember the name. Love nor money. I will remember it for the next one. I'm so sorry. But she's kind of a Harugan freak, basically. Like, I don't say freak. She's a big fan of kaiju, basically. Like, especially like loves Harugan due to the fact that, you know, it's the first kaiju she's met or seen, basically, and she kind of like has like this fantasy of like meeting him and having him step on her, like masochism stuff, you know. Just yeah, roll with it. Kuro thinks that she's his Minami's girlfriend at first, because she runs up to him like in an embracing hug, but it's learned later on that she just wanted to learn like more about Harugan through him, because he kind of like the camera's caught that he made eye contact with Kuro in her kaiju form, and she wanted to like know like how did you like how does he know like Harugan? Why is there a connection there, basically? They first meet as Kuro is walking along the seafront, basically, or along a pier, and then she spots like this lava-looking kaiju, which obviously you and I both know it's Mothra. Mothra in lava form, basically, and I was really ecstatic to see Mothra in this, because I thought to myself, no, they're actually not bringing like the actual kaiju in, because I thought to myself, no, that's trademarked, you can't do that. Toho will literally eat you a new one. They'll rip you a new one, basically, because Toho never tend to like share their produce or monsters that easily without like a reason, basically. And this is kind of what it looks like. That's Mothra. But it's actually a sleeping bag. She's inside of it. Like, okay, let me see. Like, okay, so this is the Mothra sleeping bag. There's her head here in the middle, and she kind of pops out like in a nice little reference to Mothra with the wings and all that here and there, which is quite lovely. I like how it's similar, but it's not too far off, because I think the wing pattern is meant to represent Japan, and the if I can show you, these rings on the top are meant to represent the sun of Japan, basically, or this rising sun, basically. So it's kind of interesting how that small little reference kind of is very like blatant, like blatantly put there, but it's also nice and subtle, really. And there's even kind of a scene later on, I believe, where she kind of becomes friends with Kuro, and they start singing the Mothra song. Or how does it go? Harugan, oh Harugan. But it's kind of replacing like Mothra with Harugan. I believe the Mothra song was traditionally Indonesian, but I believe it was sung in Japanese in by the Mothra twins. And they do, I think there is, I don't know if it's in this volume, but I think there's a reference to the Mothra twins that she references. There they are. There's the picture of the young Mothra twins, basically. How you also see them in later like cameos, like Mothra Rebirth is, they actually have a third sister in that. And then I believe in King of the Monsters, well, I think at least in Godzilla, you don't see her until King of the Monsters. Like one half of them, I believe. Dr. Liang is working on the site of Mothra's cocoon, being able to transform into the full uh, moth-sized version of Mothra. And Chen, I believe, who is her sister, is working alongside Mark, I think, in King of the Monsters. But I'll get on to that later on because I will cover that book. There's a novelization I want to cover because there are a couple of things in it that reference like the minds of the monsters and what they're thinking during certain actions, and I want to cover that. But I'll leave the King of the Monsters review for later on. So there's also another transformation she does where she kind of she's in a locker, I believe. She's in one of the lockers. She's trying to hide her tail because it's been like not receding in a while, so it didn't recede for a long time all day, so she's had to hide it under her gym clothes basically. And she's kind of been locked in there by the three bullies who kind of knew she was in there, and she just like resides herself in there because she thinks, oh well, this is a good opportunity for me to let my tail like take its time to recede. And then Minami basically comes and asks her if she's okay, and she's trying to avoid him because she doesn't want the same transformation happening, and she doesn't like want to hurt him or anyone else in the school basically. So she ends up whipping her tail towards the door and smacks him square in the kisser. Thankfully he doesn't see it, and she's obviously apologetic, but she kind of wraps herself up in some mats like what you use for like tumbles and flips and so on and so forth. He comes in after the door's been like whacked open by her tail. I don't know why she couldn't do that in the first place, but as you do. Well, it would have brought attention, but we don't tend to think about that in the situation. Minami comes and sits by her on the mat, and she's hiding her face and her body, and he kind of like apologizes sort of for like not being able to find her, and he kind of like asks why she's avoiding him in a certain sense. She does reassure him that she does like him, but it's like she can't like. It's kind of frustrating with shojo mangas because like it's obvious these two like each other, but she can't really tell him without like transforming, and he kind of feels left out a bit. He kind of feels like that, oh, she's mysterious, and I like that about her, but with men, we have to be let known that we're liked, or otherwise we just don't progress with the relationship. And Kuro is being very on and off, but mostly off, and that is something that he kind of feels like that he's not liked by Kuro, which Kuro ends up coming out of the mat to try and tell him something, and then as the light kind of shines on her, she then realizes, oh wait, I'm not a monster anymore, and then she then kind of has to like step back and say something else because she was about to reveal that she is Horugon basically, or something similar along those lines. And then I think, what does he say to her to make she transforms? But I think he says something to her specifically to make her transform. Either that, or he like looks her in the eye or something like that. It's just an action, either an action or a word. I believe actions do tend to bring out the more trepidous emotions within us, but I believe it was a word. Oh yes, that's right. Oh yeah, she like rips on herself, and he says like, okay, if you hate yourself, then I'll find many more reasons for you to love yourself, and I'll tell you that. It's just the confidence really, and I think he just looks deep into her eyes very convincingly, and then he offers to go get her bag, which then gives her ample time to transform, whilst everyone is kind of like away from the situation to see her not transform. And I like this one specific detail on her back. Like this is meant to be part of her spine, basically. It's in the shape of a heart, kind of. So it kind of like gives you the nice little instance that, oh yeah, this is that's a nice little design feature, basically. how it still looks traditional to the kaiju look of Godzilla with a small mixtures of other kaijus on it, but it adds like the manga writers like little stamp on it. It kind of gives a little stamp on the kaiju basically, so it's not just a complete rip off of Godzilla or something like that. It's her own creation in a certain sense. And there's some small differences, like how the spines come out of the neck, kind of like a frilled lizard basically, and the horns of course. And I think this is the shoho size for Horogon. This is a shoho version, I believe, because Shoho's Godzilla, I think, was about maybe 150 feet. So roughly the same size as maybe the Shard in London, but something along those lines, which is quite interesting, really, because I honestly thought that she would have been a bit bigger. But I think as she grows older and her emotions become stronger, she'll probably end up being a little bit more taller. But yes, that was Kaiju Girl Caramelise. I hope you all enjoyed. It's a very good, light-hearted read. It's kind of interesting, really, how you get sucked into this type of reading. Basically, I normally don't do romance novels because of the way the characters are drawn, really. But again, that shouldn't really take away that it's a good read. They don't over-sexualize the protagonist as well. It's just subtle, which I like, really, because it mostly focuses on the romance between the two protagonists. And the references for the kaiju is a very nice big buff, really, all round, really. I've read the first two books. I will do the second volume and the third and the fourth. And I believe the fifth volume, I think, is coming out sometime, I believe on the 16th or the 18th of January. I will pick that up and read that and review it, because this is a very good series so far. If it's just based off of the first two volumes, we're going to get an awful lot more kaijus and probably a few more interesting developments between Kuro and Minami. So, with that, next time you'll see me, I'll do a tattoo story time, hopefully of young Mothra here, because I'd just love to talk about kaijus. I love kaiju films in general, and I just want to share my stories of how I started out, really, with it. So, yeah, with that, lads and ladies, thank you ever so much for watching, as always, and I'll see you all next time. Take care, my friends.